The sound of rain. A child's soft breathing. My own heartbeat. Too fast, too loud. I thought I left this life behind. I gave up everything to leave it. My name in their files, my youth, the only man I ever loved. I crossed an ocean and swallowed my grief whole, and built a small, quiet life for my daughter out of nothing but sheer, stubborn will. But the Korean mafia just found my child. And the worst part? The man standing outside our door, the one with 4 armed men behind him, the one whose face I have spent 5 years trying to forget, is her father. The first thing they tell you when you work for people like the Kang family is simple. Be useful, be quiet, be nothing else. I had followed that rule for 2 years without breaking it once. I was good at being nothing. I had practice. My name is Nairobi, and I came to Seoul the way most people come to desperate decisions. Slowly, then all at once. I had been working as a freelance interpreter in Johannesburg, picking up corporate contracts, blending into the background of boardrooms and government corridors. The money was good. The work was clean. Then an agency I trusted connected me to a firm they said was private security consulting. The pay was 3 times anything I had ever seen. The contract said Seoul. The fine print said nothing useful. By the time I understood what I had walked into, I was already on the inside. The Kang syndicate operated from the upper floors of a glass building in Gangnam that looked like a law firm and felt like a held breath. Every meeting happened in a room with no windows. Every deal was conducted in layers, the surface conversation, and then the real one beneath it. My job was to translate both. I was good at it because I knew how to make myself disappear. That was the rule, until Kang Jiwan made it impossible. I met him on my 4th week. He walked into a briefing late, not carelessly late, deliberately late. The way powerful men enter rooms to remind everyone that the room belongs to them. He was taller than I expected, quieter than I expected. He wore a dark suit with the kind of stillness that makes you aware of your own noise. His eyes moved across the room like a slow scan. They landed on me for half a second longer than everyone else. I looked away first. I always looked away first. That was the rule. The meeting was about a shipment route through 3 West African ports. My job was to translate the concerns of the African contacts, their fear, their conditions, their coded threats, into language that wouldn't offend the Korean side while still communicating the weight of what was being said. It was a kind of diplomacy that required walking a wire. Jiwan watched me work without expression. Every time I translated, I felt his attention the way you feel weather. Not a sound, just a pressure. After the meeting, as the room emptied and I was collecting my notes, his voice came from behind me. You changed the 3rd paragraph. I stilled. The Angolan contact said if the terms changed again, the deal was finished. You translated it as, the contact requests confirmation of terms. I turned around. He was standing closer than I expected, arms folded, face unreadable. A direct translation would have ended the meeting, I said. He didn't actually want to walk away. He wanted to be heard. I gave him a version that let both sides stay in the room. A long pause. How did you know what he actually wanted? Because I've been in rooms like this my whole life, I said. On both sides of the table. Something shifted in his face. Not warmth, not yet, but something like recognition. What's your name? Nairobi. He said it once under his breath, quietly, like he was filing it somewhere safe. Then he walked away without another word. And I stood there, in a windowless room in Seoul, telling myself what I always told myself. This is nothing. He is nothing. You are nothing here. I believed it. For exactly 1 more week, I believed it. The next time we were alone was not planned by either of us. A negotiation had gone badly, not collapsed, but strained to the point of fracture, with the Korean and African sides of the deal circling each other like dogs deciding whether to fight. I had spent 3 hours in that room managing temperature, softening language, holding the thread. By the time it ended, I was hollow. I found a stairwell, a quiet one, near the building's east side, and I sat on the steps with my back against the wall and my eyes closed, just breathing. The door opened. Jiwan sat down 2 steps below me without asking permission. He loosened his tie. He looked straight ahead. "That was impressive," he said. "What you did in there." "I did my job." "You did more than that." I didn't answer. Silence stretched between us. But it wasn't the silence of strangers. It was the silence of 2 people who have been aware of each other for too long and are finally admitting it by saying nothing. "Why do you look at the exits every time you enter a room?" he asked. I opened my eyes. "Everyone in this building does that," I said. "Not the way you do. You look at exits like you might actually need them. In my experience, that's always good preparation." He turned to look at me then, fully, not the half-second scan of before. And I made a mistake that I have never fully recovered from. I looked back. "Where are you from?" he asked. "Does it matter? Everything about you seems to matter more than it should," he said quietly. The stairwell was very still. My heart, which had been trained for years to stay slow, stay measured, stay professional, did something it had not done in a very long time. It stuttered. "Jiwan, I said carefully. "This is a conversation that shouldn't continue." "I know," he said. He stood, fixed his tie, looked down at me with those unreadable eyes for one long moment. "And yet," he said, almost to himself, and walked back through the door. I sat in that stairwell for another 10 minutes. The rule was simple. Be useful. Be quiet. Be nothing else. I had already broken the 3rd part. That night, an envelope was slid under my hotel room door. No name, no return. Just a single line printed on white paper. "Director Kang has asked about you. Be careful what you let him see." I held it in the dark and felt the first real thread of fear. Not because of the warning. Because of who I hoped had sent it. I have spent years trying to explain to myself how it happened. And I always come back to the same answer. It happened because I was tired of being careful. Because I had been careful for so long, in so many rooms, in so many countries, that the careful part of me had worn thin like old cloth. And underneath it was just a woman who would never let herself want anything she couldn't afford to lose. Kang Jiwan was everything I couldn't afford. And I wanted him anyway. 3 days after the stairwell, Director Kang, Jiwan's father, the true head of the organization, called me into his private office. He was a man made of angles, sharp jaw, cold eyes, a voice that never rose above a certain measured level, which somehow made it more frightening than shouting. He offered me tea. I accepted it because refusing felt more dangerous. "You are very good at what you do," he said. "Thank you." "My son notices things he should not notice," he said, and paused just long enough to let me feel the weight of it. "When my son notices something, it becomes a liability, or an asset. I prefer assets." I said nothing. I had learned that silence in rooms like this was sometimes the only safe response. Director Kang set down his cup. "I am proposing a private arrangement. A marriage. Registered quietly, for internal purposes. It binds your commitment to this organization and resolves the distraction before it becomes a problem. You would be protected. Compensated. Secure." The air in the room felt thin. "You're asking me to marry your son," I said slowly. "I am telling you it would be advantageous for everyone," he said, "including you. The world outside this organization is not always kind to women who know too much." I heard the threat beneath the offer, as clearly as if he had said it plainly. Marry him, or leave. And leaving, at this point, has consequences. I said I would consider it. I left his office and walked directly to the east stairwell. 20 minutes later, Jiwan found me there. I wondered briefly if his father had sent him. But when I looked at his face, at the tightness around his jaw, the storm behind his eyes, I understood he already knew. "He told you," I said. "He informed me, yes. And what do you think?" Jiwan sat down. He looked at his hands for a moment. "I think my father does not make proposals. He makes calculations." "And what am I in his calculation?" "Insurance," he said quietly. a chain around both of us. I exhaled. "I'm not going to pretend this is romantic," I said. "So tell me what you actually want, Jiwan." He looked up, and for the first time, the control broke. Just slightly, just enough for me to see what was underneath it. "I've wanted to have a real conversation with you since the first meeting," he said. "Not a transaction, not a strategy, just you and what's actually behind everything you're careful not to say." My chest tightened. "That's dangerous," I said. "I know. We shouldn't. I know that too." The stairwell was quiet. The whole building was quiet. And the careful part of me, the thin, worn part, finally gave way. "One real conversation," I said. "That's all." The paperwork was signed 3 days later in a small government office with 2 witnesses who asked no questions. No ceremony, no celebration, just signatures and a return to the glass building in Gangnam as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Because what I had told myself was business, a forced arrangement, a survival strategy, had somehow become the realest thing in my life. We talked every night. Not about the organization. Not about operations or shipments or risk assessments. We talked about the things that had shaped us. His childhood in the shadow of a father who treated love like weakness. My years of moving between countries, never belonging anywhere fully, always translating other people's lives while keeping my own locked away. He listened the way no one had ever listened to me. Like my words mattered precisely because they were mine. And I fell. I fell so quietly, so completely, that I didn't recognize it until it was already too late to climb back out. The night the line was crossed was not dramatic. There was no grand declaration. We had been reading in his apartment, side by side on a couch, not touching, the city lit up below us. And he had looked at me, and I had looked at him, and the space between us had simply closed. Fade to black. I will not tell you what that night was. I will only tell you that I understood in the morning why people ruin their lives for love. Because it felt worth ruining things for. It felt like finally being somewhere I actually belonged. I should have known that things which feel like home are the most dangerous things of all. 2 weeks after that night, something shifted. Jiwan began to pull back. Not coldly, never cruelly, but with a distance that grew a few centimeters every day. Meetings that had run long began ending on schedule. The stairwell was empty when I passed it. The evenings alone stopped. I told myself he was busy. I told myself it was the organization, the pressure, the weight of his father's world. Then I saw him in Director Kang's office through the glass wall. His father speaking. Jiwan listening with that stone-still face he wore in negotiations. And then Director Kang looking up, directly at me, through the glass, with an expression that told me everything I needed to know. The distance had not come from Jiwan. It had been engineered by his father, and I understood, with a cold and terrible clarity, that whatever I had meant to Jiwan, whatever was real between us, would always be smaller than what Director Kang could take away. That same night, I sat alone in the bathroom of our shared apartment, holding a small white test in both hands, watching a line appear that rewrote every plan I had ever made. I was pregnant, and for the first time since arriving in Seoul, I felt something that was not love and not fear. It was the cold certainty that this child would not be safe here. Not with a grandfather who moved people like chess pieces. Not in a world where my baby would be a chain before she was ever a person. I had one choice, and it would cost me everything. There are things you do not plan. And there are things you plan so precisely, so carefully, that planning them feels like dying slowly. Leaving Jiwan was the second kind. I gave myself 48 hours after the test to be afraid. That was all I allowed. 48 hours of sitting with the enormity of it, of imagining a different world where I could simply tell him, where the joy of this could belong to both of us, where his father was not a man who turned children into leverage. Then I closed that door, and I started planning. I had one advantage that Director Kang had underestimated. I was very, very good at disappearing. I had done it before, between countries, between lives, I knew how to move quietly. I knew which documents could be forged, which contacts asked no questions, which routes left no clean trail. I had spent 2 years inside a crime organization learning exactly how people were controlled, and therefore exactly how to slip past the controls. I began by doing nothing differently. I showed up to every meeting. I translated every conversation. I gave Director Kang nothing to flag, nothing to watch more closely. But underneath that performance, I was dismantling everything. I withdrew money in small amounts from the account they paid me through, never enough to trigger attention. I contacted an old friend in Nairobi, a woman named Zawadi, who had sheltered strays and secrets for 30 years without asking for explanations. I told her I was coming. She said, "Come." The hardest part was the marriage. The records needed to show a clean dissolution, not abandonment. Abandonment would trigger a search. The organization needed to believe I had left quietly, on my own terms, for reasons they could explain away. I used a contact inside the civil office, a man who owed a favor to someone who owed a favor to me, and the paperwork moved. Kang Jiwan's wife, according to the records, had ended the union by mutual private agreement. He never contested it. I told myself that meant it had been easy for him. I told myself the distance in those final weeks was his answer, that Director Kang had simply said something to him that confirmed I was never meant to stay.
Before you continue, if this story touched something in you, you should know this is only the beginning. The complete version includes 30 full audio stories, more than 30 hours of uninterrupted listening. No ads, no cuts, no distractions. Scan the QR code on your screen, or tap the link in the pinned comment to continue listening
I told
right
myself all of this on the taxi to Incheon Airport, with my 2 bags and my secret and my breaking heart. I almost believed it. I landed in Nairobi on a Thursday morning in October. Zawadi met me at arrivals. She took one look at my face and pulled me into her arms without a word. I had not cried once since the bathroom. I cried then, quietly, in the middle of the arrivals hall, with my bags at my feet and a city I had barely lived in stretching out ahead of me as my new life. "How far along?" she asked. 8 weeks. She nodded like this was a problem she had encountered before and knew how to handle. "Then we have time to get settled," she said. "Come." I do not romanticize what those years were. I built something real in Nairobi, but I built it with my hands and my exhaustion, and every late-night shift and every skipped meal, and every morning I woke up before dawn, because sleep was a luxury I could not always afford. I worked as a translator for an NGO, then for a law firm with international clients. I was good at it. I was always good at it. Sua was born in late spring, in a hospital with yellow walls and a window that looked out over a row of flame trees. She came into the world at 3 a.m., small and loud and furious. And when they placed her in my arms, I looked at her face and saw him immediately. His eyes, his jaw. That particular quality of stillness, even in a newborn, as if she was already assessing the room. I named her Sua because I could not bring myself to erase him from her completely. I just erased him from the paperwork. 5 years passed. Sua grew into a small person of impossible intensity. Curious, quick, funny in the deadpan way her father was funny, which hurt every single time. She called Zawadi Bibi, and Zawadi loved her with the fierce, uncomplicated love that I think only older women who have seen enough of the world can give a child. We were not rich. We were not comfortable, but we were safe. I had one rule: never go back to Seoul. Never pick up work that connected to that world. Never give anyone a thread that could be pulled. I had followed that rule for 5 years. And then one Tuesday night in February, I made the mistake of falling asleep at a bus stop. I don't even fully remember sitting down. The late bus had been delayed. Sua had fallen asleep against my arm after a long day, her small weight warm and trusting against my side. The bench was cold, but the heat of her made it bearable. I had meant to stay awake. I had meant to watch. I closed my eyes for one moment. And in that moment, on that particular street, in that particular city, a convoy of black vehicles was moving toward the airport on a route that did not usually pass this way. Except that night, because of construction on the main road, they had been redirected. I know all of this now. I have put it together since. At the time, I knew nothing. I was asleep. The first thing I was aware of, surfacing toward consciousness, was not a sound but a feeling. The particular pressure of being watched. The specific weight of eyes you have known before. I opened my eyes. The street was quiet. The convoy had stopped. A man stood 20 meters away, facing me, perfectly still. I could not see his face in the dark, but I knew the shape of him. I had memorized the shape of him without meaning to 5 years ago, in a windowless room in Seoul. Sua shifted in my arms and made a small sound in her sleep, turning her face toward the streetlight. The man stepped forward. The amber light fell across his face. Kang Jiwan. Older. Harder. That same absolute stillness, except that every part of it was broken now, just in this moment, as his eyes moved from my face to the sleeping child in my arms and back again. His jaw worked once. His eyes, Sua's eyes, the exact same shape, the exact same darkness, fixed on his daughter's sleeping face. And I watched him understand. I watched the understanding move through him like a wound. I had imagined this moment 100 times in 5 years. I had imagined his anger, his coldness, his father's machinery deployed against me. I had imagined a dozen versions of what happened when Kang Jiwan found out. I had never imagined this. I had never imagined he would look like something inside him had just broken and healed and broken again in the span of 3 seconds. I held Sua tighter. His lieutenant, Minho, I recognized him, stepped forward. Jiwan raised one hand, barely. Minho stopped. We looked at each other across the empty street. Jiwan's voice, when it came, was very quiet, very controlled, the voice of a man using every skill he had to hold himself together. How old is she? My throat was closed. I could not answer. He asked again, still quiet, still terrifyingly still. Naledi, how old is she? 4, I whispered. The silence after that word was the longest silence of my life. Go home, he said finally. Lock your door. He turned back toward the vehicle. Jiwan. He stopped but did not turn. I will come to you in the morning, he said. And you will tell me everything. He got back in the car. The convoy moved on. I sat at the bus stop in the dark with my sleeping daughter in my arms and my whole carefully constructed life cracking at the seams around me. And I understood that the running was over. Whatever came next, I would have to face it standing still. At 2 a.m., I heard it. A single knock at my door. Not Jiwan, too early and too hesitant. I opened it to find a folded note pushed under the frame, written in Korean in a hand I did not recognize. Leave before morning. He is not the one you should be afraid of. His father already knows where you are. I pressed my back against the door and looked at my sleeping daughter across the room, and I thought, 5 years of running, and it brought us back here anyway. I did not sleep. How could I sleep? I sat in the dark with Sua's small body curled under a blanket on the bed we shared, her breathing slow and even and completely unaware that the world had just shifted beneath her. I watched the rise and fall of her chest. I watched her the way I had watched her every night for 4 years, with that particular love that is also terror, that specific kind of devotion that has no bottom. She looked so much like him in sleep. I had always known it. I had lived with it every day. The jaw, the stillness, the eyes that even closed seemed to be thinking. I had absorbed it into my routine so completely that most days it was just her face, just Sua, just my daughter. But tonight I could see him in her with brutal clarity, because he had been standing 20 meters away an hour ago, and the resemblance was not something I could blur anymore. The note under my door sat on the table in front of me. Leave before morning. He is not the one you should be afraid of. His father already knows where you are. I turned it over in my hands. Korean handwriting, precise, educated. Not Minho's style. I had seen Minho's notes in meetings years ago. This was someone else. Someone inside Jiwan's circle who was warning me rather than reporting to Director Kang, which meant there were fractures in that circle, which meant things had changed in 5 years. I thought about what that meant. Really thought about it. The way I used to think inside those windowless rooms in Seoul, stripping away the surface of a situation to find the actual structure underneath. Director Kang already knew where I was. That meant the convoy's rerouting tonight was not coincidence. Or at least, even if Jiwan's discovery of me was accidental, his father's knowledge was not. Someone had been watching me for longer than tonight, which meant that the life I believed was hidden had not been as hidden as I thought. 5 years of careful silence, and it had not been enough. I looked at my daughter. How long has he known? I thought. And why wait until now? By the time pale gray light began at the window, I had made my decision. I would not run. Not because I wasn't afraid. I was. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to pack Sua's things and call Zawadi and disappear again. Deeper this time. Somewhere with no Korean business connections for 1,000 kilometers in every direction. But I thought about that note. I thought about the fractures it suggested. I thought about the look on Jiwan's face at the bus stop, that broken, healed, broken again look. And I understood something I had been refusing to understand for 5 years. Running had not protected my daughter from Director Kang. It had just removed the one person who might. He came at 7 in the morning. A knock. 3 times. Measured. Controlled. I had heard that knock before. I had opened doors to it in a glass building in Gangnam and felt my heart do things it shouldn't. I opened it now. He was alone. No Min-ho. No guards visible in the hallway, though I was certain they were nearby. He had changed clothes from the night before. Still dark, still precise. And he looked like he had slept as little as I had. He looked at me for a moment. Then he looked past me, into the apartment, to where Sua was still asleep on the bed. Something moved across his face that I had no name for. "May I come in?" he asked. The formality of it, the asking, caught me off guard. This was not the Kang Jiwan his father had built. Or maybe it was the Kang Jiwan his father had never managed to finish building. I stepped back. He came inside. He stood in the middle of my small Nairobi apartment, with its mismatched furniture and Sua's drawings pinned to the wall and the smell of the flame trees coming through the cracked window. And he looked around at my life, at the actual texture of it, and his expression was unreadable in the way that, after years, I now understood meant he was feeling too much to show any of it. "She is mine," he said. Not a question. Yes. 4 years old. She turned 4 in November. A long pause. Her name. Sua. He closed his eyes. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see that the name had reached something deep. "You gave her a Korean name," he said quietly. "I couldn't not," I said. And that was the most honest thing I had said to him in 5 years. Sua woke up at 7:30. She emerged from the bedroom in her pajamas, the yellow ones with the small bears, rubbing her eyes, hair wild from sleep, completely unaware that the man sitting across from her mother was anything more than a stranger. She looked at him. He looked at her. Sua, who had inherited my wariness along with his stillness, did not run to him. She did not hide. She stood in the doorway and tilted her head slightly, exactly the way Jiwan tilted his head in meetings when he was processing something, and said, "Who are you?" Jiwan's breath caught. I heard it. "My name is Jiwan," he said carefully. "I'm a friend of your mother's." Sua considered this for a long moment with the gravity of a 4-year-old conducting a serious evaluation. "You have the same eyes as me," she said. The room went very still. Jiwan looked at me. I looked at my hands. "Yes," he said softly. "I do." Sua seemed to find this satisfactory. She walked to the kitchen and asked me for her cereal, as if nothing significant had happened, because for her, nothing significant had happened. She was 4, and she was hungry, and the world was still simple. I stood and went to the kitchen, and Kang Jiwan sat in my apartment and watched his daughter eat breakfast. And I did not look at his face because I already knew what I would see there, and I was not ready for it. We talked while Sua played on the floor with her small collection of toy animals, a ritual she performed every morning with great seriousness, arranging them by a logic only she understood. "How did your father find me?" I asked. Jiwan's hands were folded on the table. "A contact in the NGO sector. Someone who reports regional movements of persons connected to our network. Your name flagged 3 months ago when you applied for an international contract position. And he told you?" "He told no one. That is the problem." Jiwan's voice was controlled, but something beneath it was very cold. "He has been watching you on his own. I found out last night. By accident. The rerouted convoy. Yes, he did not know I would be in that vehicle. I absorbed this. So he knows about Sua. I don't know how much he knows. Jiwan." I said his name flat, direct. "What does your father want with a 4-year-old child?" His jaw tightened. Leverage, control, an heir he can shape from the beginning, without the complications of a son who developed inconvenient, independent thinking. The words landed like ice water. I looked at Sua on the floor, arranging her giraffe and her lion with intense concentration. "He is not touching her," I said. "No," Jiwan said. And for the first time since he had walked through my door, his voice was not controlled at all. It was stripped down to something raw and absolutely final. "He is not." He was reaching for his phone when it buzzed first. He looked at the screen and went very still, the kind of still that I recognized from 5 years ago as the stillness before something dangerous. He stood up slowly. "My father's men are 2 streets away," he said quietly. "They are not here for a conversation." He looked at Sua. He looked at me. And then Kang Jiwan, the heir to one of the most feared criminal families in Seoul, said the 4 words I had never expected to hear from him. "I need your trust." Trust. That word from him. After everything. I almost laughed. I almost told him that trust was the thing I had given him 5 years ago and carried out of Seoul in pieces. I almost told him that trust was the thing I had been rebuilding, brick by brick, in a city that had nothing to do with him, for a daughter he had never met. But there were men 2 streets away, and Sua was on the floor with her giraffe and her lion, completely unaware. "What do you need?" I said. What followed was 40 minutes of controlled, quiet emergency. Jiwan called Minho, the one person in his circle he trusted completely, he said, and gave instructions in rapid Korean that I translated in my head without effort. "Take the child and the woman to the safe house on the east side, not the one father knows about, the other one, yes. Now, do not use the main roads." He made 3 other calls. Each one brief, coded, efficient. I packed a bag for Sua in 8 minutes, the essentials, the toy giraffe, because she would not sleep without it. I packed nothing for myself except my documents, and the small locked box I kept at the back of the wardrobe that held every piece of identification I had built for the 2 of us in 5 years. Sua, sensing the energy in the room, stopped playing. She came to my legs and held on. "Are we going somewhere, Mama?" "Yes, baby. An adventure." She looked at Jiwan. "Is he coming?" "Part of the way," I said. She considered this, looked at him again with those evaluating eyes. "Okay," she decided, and went back to collect her giraffe with the self-possession of someone much older. Minho came in a nondescript gray car, not one of the black convoy vehicles. He was heavier than I remembered, and he looked at me with an expression that was complicated. Recognition, something like guilt, something like relief. "Naledisi," he said quietly, which was not something I expected. "Minho," I said. There was an entire 5 years in that exchange. Jiwan put Sua in the back seat himself, carefully, the way someone handles something extraordinarily precious that they are afraid of dropping. She let him. She watched his face as he buckled her seatbelt, with that disconcerting directness of small children. "You're very serious," she told him. "Yes," he said. "My mama is also serious." "I know. She makes funny faces sometimes, though." Something almost happened on his face. Almost. "I'll look forward to that," he said quietly. He closed her door. He turned to me. Go with Minho. I will handle my father. Jiwan. Naledi. He said my name the way he had said it years ago in that stairwell. Quietly. Like he was filing it somewhere safe. This is what I should have done 5 years ago. Let me do it now. What did he tell you? I asked. Back then. What did your father say to make you pull away? The question had been inside me for 5 years. I had never expected to ask it. I asked it now because we might not have another chance, and I could not drive away without knowing. Jiwan's face changed. He told me you had agreed to end the marriage, he said. That you had gone to him directly and asked to be released from the arrangement. That you had been paid, and that you had chosen to leave. The breath left my body. He told you I chose to leave. Yes, and you believed him. A terrible pause. I wanted to ask you, Jiwan said. I came to find you that evening. You were already gone. I thought about the night I had left. The careful timing. The window I had calculated when I knew Jiwan would be in a long external meeting. Director Kang had not just pushed us apart. He had made sure I was gone before Jiwan could reach me. He lied to both of us, I said. Yes. He made you think I left you. He made me think you let me go. Jiwan said nothing. There was nothing to say. We had lost 5 years to a calculation made by a cold man in a glass office who treated people like positions on a board. I felt the grief of it and the fury of it at exactly the same time. Go, Jiwan said. His voice was rough now. I will come to you tonight. The safe house was a small apartment above a fabric shop in a quiet eastern neighborhood. Minho settled us in without many words, left food on the table, posted himself outside the door. Su'a ate crackers and fell asleep on the couch before noon, exhausted by the morning's adventure. I sat beside her and tried to hold my thoughts together. Jiwan arrived at 4 in the afternoon. He looked like he had walked through fire and came out the other side. His jaw was set, his eyes were hard, but he was whole. And the way he visibly relaxed when he saw Su'a sleeping told me everything I needed to know about what kind of man he was underneath the empire he'd been given. It's done, he said. What did you do? He sat down across from me and was quiet for a long moment. I made it clear to my father that Su'a is not available to him, in any capacity. Ever. And he accepted that. He did not have a choice. A pause. I have spent the last 5 years consolidating power that he thought I was consolidating for him. The organization now runs through me. He is retired. I absorbed that. Is she safe? From him, yes. From the residual risks of the world we operate in. He looked at his hands. That is a longer conversation. Then we should have it, I said. He looked up. I want to have it, I said. Not now, not today. But I want to have every conversation we didn't get to have. I want to do that, if it's something you want. The room was quiet. Su'a made a small sound in her sleep. She had somehow arranged her giraffe so it was tucked under her chin. Jiwan watched her for a long moment. I missed 4 years, he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't know she existed, and I missed 4 years. I know. I'm not asking you for forgiveness. I understand why you left. I understand every choice you made. Jiwan. I just need you to know that Jiwan. I said his name again, quieter. I know. Another long silence. Then yes, he said finally. Every conversation. All of them. Whatever you need. That evening, Su'a woke from her nap and found Jiwan sitting on the floor beside the couch. She looked at him with those serious eyes for a long moment. Then she picked up her giraffe and placed it carefully in his hands. Which is what she did, Zawadi had once told me, when she decided she trusted someone. Jiwan held it like it was made of glass. And I stood in the doorway, watching a 4-year-old girl give her father a toy giraffe in a safe house above a fabric shop in Nairobi. And I felt the 5 years between us begin, very slowly, very carefully, to close. Healing is not a moment. I want to be clear about that, because stories like to pretend it is. A door opening, a truth spoken, a pair of arms found again after years, and then resolved, like a chord played in the right key. Finished. Clean. That is not how it was for us. It was slow. It was uneven. There were days it felt possible, and days it felt like the distance between what we had lost and what we were trying to build was simply too wide to cross. But we crossed it anyway. Jiwan stayed in Nairobi for 3 weeks after that day. He stayed in a hotel nearby. He did not push, did not assume, did not try to slot himself into our life at a speed that suited him rather than us. That restraint, more than anything else, told me he had changed. The Kang Jiwan his father had shaped would have made decisions and presented them as facts. This man asked questions. He waited for answers. He deferred to Sua's pace. And Sua's pace was, characteristically, her own. She did not warm to him immediately. She circled him for days with that precise 4-year-old evaluation, testing small things. Would he be patient when she took too long putting her shoes on? Would he be honest when she asked direct questions? Would he flinch when she pushed? He passed every test without appearing to know he was taking one. On the 5th day, she climbed into the chair beside him while he was reading and said, "Read to me." He read to her for 2 hours. That was that. What does she know? He asked me one evening when Sua was asleep. We were on the small balcony of the safe house. We had stayed longer than necessary, neither of us quite ready to move, with the sounds of the neighborhood rising around us. "She knows you have the same eyes as her," I said. "She knows you are important to me. She is for Jiwan. She knows what she needs to know. When do we tell her?" "When she asks. And she will. She asks about everything." He nodded slowly. "I want to do this properly," he said. "I want to be present. Not from soul, not occasionally. Present. Whatever that requires from me to make possible, I will do it. That might mean giving up things you're not ready to give up. I know what it might mean." I looked at him. "The organization, I have a transition plan," he said. "I have been building it for 2 years. Not because I knew this was coming. I didn't know you were here. I built it because I could not keep doing what my father built and still be someone I recognized." A pause. "I was trying to find a way out before I found you at that bus stop. Finding you just clarified the direction." I was quiet for a long moment. "I need you to understand something," I said finally. "Sua is not a reason for you to be a better person. She is not your redemption project. If you stay because you choose to, not because she is a cure for the life you've lived. I know that. Do you? Naledi." He looked at me directly. "I want to stay because of her, and because of you. And because I spent 5 years in a life that got colder and emptier, and more efficient, and I understood I was becoming my father, and that is the one thing I have never wanted to be." He paused. "She is not my reason for change. She is my evidence that change is still possible." That was not a calculated thing to say. That was not the language of a man performing goodness for an audience. That was the truth. I believed him. 3 weeks became a month. Zawadi met him on a Sunday and studied him across the table with the frank assessment of a woman who had seen enough of the world to recognize quality from performance. After he left, she said to me, "Stubborn. Too serious. Clearly loves you both. That's your verdict? I've met worse men. I've met better men." She poured her tea. "But I have never met a man who watched a child sleep the way he watches Sua. Like she is the most important thing he has ever been trusted with." I looked into my cup. "Don't let pride keep you from something real," she said. "You've carried enough alone." It was Sua who asked the question. It was a Saturday morning. She was sitting between us at the kitchen table, a configuration that had somehow become ordinary over the past weeks, eating her cereal with great concentration. Jiwan was drinking his coffee. I was reading. She looked up at him. "Are you my appa?" The word in Korean, appa, father, landed in the room like a stone in still water. Jiwan set down his cup. He looked at me. Just for a second, not for permission, but to check that I was with him in this moment. I nodded, almost imperceptibly. He looked back at Suwa. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am." Suwa considered this for the full 30 seconds her cereal required. "Okay," she said, and went back to eating. I laughed. I don't think I had fully laughed, not the kind that starts in your chest and takes your breath with it, in a very long time. It came out of me unexpectedly, helplessly, and Jiwan stared at me for a stunned second before something opened in his face completely.
If you stayed until the end, it's because this story stayed with you. What you heard here is just a fragment. The full experience lives in 30 complete audio stories, carefully told with every emotion, every secret, and every moment that couldn't be shared on YouTube. There are no ads, no interruptions, and you can listen anytime, anywhere, in total privacy. Scan the QR code on your screen now, or tap the link in the pinned comment, and discover what was
And
never
he laughed
said.
too. And Suwa looked at both of us with great patience and said, "You're both being weird," which made it worse, which made it better. This is where I would like to tell you that we rebuilt everything quickly, that love, once recovered, assembles itself efficiently, that all the years between us dissolved. But we were two careful, wounded people who had both learned to protect themselves, and what we built slowly and deliberately, the way you build something you mean to last. He ended the organization's active operations over 14 months. Legitimate enterprises absorbed the structure. Lawyers were involved. Regulators were managed. It was complicated and sometimes dangerous, and I won't pretend it was clean, because nothing born in that world is ever fully clean. But he did it. He moved to Nairobi. Not for a visit. Not temporarily. He moved. He learned the city with the same focused intensity he had brought to every room he'd ever sat in. And eventually the city accommodated him. And eventually our life accommodated him. And eventually, slowly, unevenly, honestly, we became something that felt like a family. Suwa called him Appa within a month and never looked back. I took longer. But I got there. There is a bench outside our building where I sometimes sit in the early mornings before anyone else wakes up. I bring tea. I watch the flame trees. I let my mind be quiet. One morning, Jiwan came and sat beside me. We didn't talk. We just sat, in the early light, with the city waking up around us and our daughter sleeping inside. And I thought about the bus stop, the cold bench, the delayed bus, the amber streetlight, the convoy that should have gone a different way. I thought about the note under the door. We still don't know who wrote it. I thought about his father, retired now, silent, diminished. The empire he built unraveled by the son he had tried to control. I thought about 5 years of running. And then I thought about this morning. This bench. This man beside me. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That bus stops are terrible places to fall asleep," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad you did," he said. I leaned my head against his shoulder. "So am I," said. The flame trees moved in the morning wind. We stayed there until Suwa called for us from inside. "Mama, Appa, breakfast." The most ordinary, extraordinary sentence in the world. We went inside. Sometimes, the life you are running from is the one that finally catches you in the right direction. I am Naledi. I was a mafia translator, a runaway wife, a woman who crossed an ocean with a secret. Now I am simply a mother, a partner, a woman who sat at a bus stop on the wrong night and, somehow, found her way home. This is where the story rests, for now. 2 months after Jiwan moved to Nairobi, a letter arrived. No return address. Sole postmark. Inside, a single photograph. A woman I had never seen. Young, perhaps 25. Standing in front of a building I recognized immediately, the Kang family's main Seoul office. And written on the back of the photograph in Director Kang's handwriting, 4 words. She knows about Suwa. Jiwan stood at the window for a long time after I showed it to him. His jaw was set in the way I had learned to read as him containing something large. Who is she? I asked. He was quiet for too long. Jiwan. Her name is Kang Yuna, he said finally. She is... My father arranged a second contract, years ago. Before you. He never told me. The room was very still. Is she... I don't know, he said. I genuinely don't know. I looked at the photograph. The woman in it was not looking at the camera. She was looking at a small child standing just outside the frame. I could only see the edge of the child's sleeve. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. The story was supposed to be over. It was just beginning. Naledi ran across an ocean to protect her daughter. She rebuilt her life from nothing. She forgave the unforgivable. She chose love when fear would have been easier. But the photograph on the table asks a question she never prepared for. If there is another child out there, born of the same cold calculation that tried to destroy her family, what does she do? And what does it mean to build a home on ground that was never fully cleared? Tell me in the comments. Would you have stayed? Or would you have run again? And do you believe Kang Jiwan is telling the full truth about Yuna? This story does not end here. It only pauses. But that is a different chapter, for a different day.